how many ways can you get in trouble with creative financing? Seller financing is the best way to own real estate with no money down. These are all things people say. Using a lease option is the quickest way to own property with no money. You name the price, I'll name the terms. I have seen this so much. It's just like unbelievable how often I see this. I'm assigning my equitable interest. My best escape clause in a hot market, my partner must approve this offer. Terry will discuss these more. I will pay a 3% commission if you bring me a buyer. So, everybody think in terms of what your contracts say, right? Terry, would you come on up? Terry Adams, the senior partner and owner of the Adams Law Firm, and a long-time friend of the group.
Absolutely.
Terry, thank you very much.
No problem, no problem. Okay, so Victor and I talked a little bit about this last night, and we decided that I wouldn't do a PowerPoint because we didn't want to put you guys to sleep. That if you have asked somebody for money to invest in a property, you are governed under the Security and Exchange Commission's regulations and the federal laws of the United States government. Period. You would, at that point, need to file a document with the Security and Exchange Commission. Can anybody tell me what that document is? Not one person. Not one person. So you have to be very careful and very serious about this. Hey, Kevin, would you bring me that piece of paper that I left sitting there? It occurred to me how little people talk about these issues when I talked to Victor last night. He brought, thank you, Kevin. This is Kevin Duncan, outstanding attorney with Adams Law Firm and Admiral Title. He will be here to help you, or be there to help you anytime that you might need it. So, Victor brought me this consent order from a real estate investor. Happened about 10 years ago. And he told me that these guys were advertising on Craigslist and doing a couple other things, and got a phone call from not the SEC, thank goodness, but they could have easily been hit by the federal government, but by the state, which also requires people who are selling securities, which if you're out marketing stocks, interest in property, anything like that, if you're asking people you don't know for money, and actually if you're asking people you do know for money to invest in an LLC or a particular project, you are still selling a security. So you got to be very careful. These fine people who Victor actually had the courage to pick up the phone and call, which I think we ought to all do more. When I looked at this consent order, the first thing I asked Victor was, how much was the fine? So of course, the guy had forgotten about the $2,000 fine that he was assessed and paid because his attorney fees were over $10,000. So he remembered a lot more about what it cost him out of pocket with his attorneys than he did with regards to how much the actual fine was. But I wanted to just share this part. Tennessee Code annotated 48-2109A provides it is unlawful for any person to transact business from or in the state as a broker-dealer, agent of a broker-dealer, or investment advisor unless such person is registered as a broker-dealer, agent of a broker-dealer, or an investment advisor. 48-2109B, it is unlawful for any broker-dealer to employ an agent to transact business as an agent unless the agent is registered. What it also says it's unlawful for any person to sell any security in this state unless it is registered under the Act and the security or transaction is exempted under Tennessee Code annotated 48-103, or the security is a covered security.
Everybody get those notes? Everybody got that written down?
So there's a lot of that, right? There's a lot of that. So you think that you know it. You think you know it all. It's very, very, very tricky. And you have to be very careful on how you structure these deals. If you sit down and you two guys know each other, what's your name? Gary and Tyrone. Gary and Tyrone are friends. They know each other. They hang out. they're drinking a beer one night, and Gary says, "Tyrone, man, I saw this house, and I think we can make some money on it." They get in the car and they go see it, and they say, "Man, let's buy this together." That is not covered. You don't have to worry about those circumstances. Those kind of deals are not the kind of thing the federal government or the state of Tennessee wants to get involved in. But if Gary sees this house and he comes in and he set up an LLC with the Adams Law Firm, which he should, and says, "I've got this great house. Everybody, I'm looking for investors. We are going to make so much money." He is absolutely covered under not only state law, but also federal law. There is a form that he'll need to file, Form D, 506, the Securities Exchange Regulations. Very important to do it, and he has to file that form the first investor that he gets. And basically what that does is that says, what we're looking for is we're looking for an exemption from having to register under the Securities Exchange laws. Those exemptions are very complicated. It is not something that we'll get into tonight, but if you ever do decide to come in and have a conversation with us at Adams Law Firm, I'll be happy to go over them with you. But I will say this, if you're soliciting folks to invest in deals that you don't know, you need to make sure that those people are what is called an accredited investor. An accredited investor is somebody who makes $200,000 a year or more, or as a husband and wife makes $300,000 a year or more, or they have $1 million in assets. What the rule of thumb is, and what every attorney will tell you, is if you're soliciting funds, assume that the federal government and the state want to know. However, realize that it is not the business of the state of Tennessee nor the federal government to stand in the way of commerce and things actually going forward and things happening. If this is somebody that you know and you've sat down and had a conversation about it, that is a partnership enterprise that is organically grown. That is not something that if you had to define it, is it organic or is it something that you have created yourself? Is it something that you could potentially advertise and solicit people, investors, or is it something that you couldn't potentially advertise and solicit investors? If I called my mother and said, hey, I want to invest in this house in Knoxville, and she'd say yes, no, or whatever. But that's not something I can solicit. I only have one mother. But if, however, it is investors that you want and you don't really care where they come from, then that's the point at which you're probably getting into that realm.